Is Wednesday, March 25th at 7:17 p.m. This meeting is a meeting of the Community Board for Police Accountability. Welcome. You must sign up in advance for public comment. I have it up here for folks that maybe didn't get a chance to sign up but would still like to. Individuals can comment for 3 minutes unless stated otherwise. The OCPA employee preserves order or designee. That's me today. Disruptive comments or conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your comments when your time is up, or interrupting others' comments or the board's discussions and deliberations will not be allowed. If you cause a disruption, a warning will be given. Further disruption will result in ejection from the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave when subject to ejection is subject to arrest or trespass. Additionally, the board may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. When providing your comments, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. If you're a lobbyist, identify the organization you represent. So with that, I am going to call the roll, and we're going to have our board members introduce themselves in the typical order, starting with Kyle.
Kyle Ashby, District 2, he, him.
Murtaza Batla, he, him, District 4.
Justice.
Madeline Carroll, she, they.
Sarah Citronbaum, she, her.
Yes, it is.
Corinne Frechette.
Trish Garner.
The PowerPoint.
Skylar Halsey, he, him.
Terrence is absent. Jillian.
Jillian Herrera, they, she, District 2.
Ash Jimenez, she, her.
Pete is absent. Tita.
I'm Tita Lane Hound, District 3.
Shelley is absent. Jesse.
Jesse Nielsen, I use he, him pronouns, District 2.
Tim O'Donnell, he, him, District 2.
Tim Pitts, he, him.
Natisha Pratt, she, her.
Dina Ross, she, her.
Attica Sommerfeld, Z, they.
And Benedict Springer, he, him.
Next slide. Next slide, please. All right. Thank you. So with that, we are going to introduce our facilitator for tonight. Tori?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Tori Campbell, and I will be facilitating. I'm going to move to the table in the center just so I don't have to crane my neck, and also it gives me a chance to see everyone's faces and names. So just give me a moment. I'll make my way over.
Great. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the first thing that we need to do is have folks approve the agenda for tonight. This agenda was created by our very own Madeline, Tim Pitts, and Dina Ross. So thank you for your work to put this together. And so I am looking for someone to motion to approve the agenda for tonight's board meeting.
Motion to approve.
Can we put it on the screen?
So I have motion by Ash. And then we have a second by many, but I'll go with Madeline. I hear your Corinne? All right, by Ash, seconded by Corinne. All right, let's go ahead and call the roll. Kyle?
Aye.
Murtaza?
Yes.
Justice? Justice?
Aye.
Madeline?
Aye.
Sarah? Aye. Corinne?
Aye.
Trish?
Aye.
Skylar?
Aye.
Terrence is absent. Jillian?
Aye.
Ash?
Aye.
Pete's absent. Tita?
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
Tim O,
Yes.
Tim P,
Yes.
Tisha,
Aye.
Dina,
Aye.
Atticus,
Aye.
Benedict. Great. Next slide. All right, so Tori, you're gonna have guests sitting next to you, if any. I know we have one name. Tracy, can you grab the list? Signed up for public comment, and we'll get our timer queued up. So we'd like to welcome Aaron Long up. Aaron, are you with us? Did you hang in this long? All right, no Aaron. All right, then with that, we will move to our next item on the agenda. So just as a reminder, we have Tori facilitating tonight, and he's going to step us through some of these different pieces. Tori, can I hand it over to you?
Yes. Great. So I'll pause. All right. I'm sure you can hear me at this point. So as you may recall, for public testimony, these are questions that we want you to think about, not for you to answer this evening, but really for our upcoming meeting, which will be on the 8th. So these are questions for you to consider, to think about. I'll just read them briefly just so that we can have them mentioned for this evening and for you to reflect on them. What would you like public comment? What would you like public comment in terms of as a start or to end? This having it happen right now is something that you haven't had in the past. So would you like this to be the current or common practice, or would you like it to happen at the end of the meeting? I know you've had that as an experience. Should public comment happen before substantive votes? That's something that's also been a part of your conversation. It also gives you a chance to hear from the community, for them also to feel like they can weigh in before a decision is made, and that also has a certain value. What does a substantive vote mean to you? How much time should be given for public comment? Right now it stands as 3 minutes. I believe that's in common practice with other bodies that currently allow that to take place. And then the last question is how much time should be given for public comment on substantive votes? As you'd imagine, there are constraints that are oftentimes given, but in some instances, allowing more time allows for people to share. So again, these are questions not to be answered this evening, but we want to give you a chance to think about them, come back on the 8th, and this will be a part of, I would assume, part of the agenda. So just wanted to note that for this evening. That's it for this session. So tonight, because of some of the technical difficulties, my role as a facilitator is to create both the space that you need to have the conversations on particular two items on the agenda, but also to keep you all on task, to get through both the opportunity to hear the topic, to allow you the space to discuss as a group, and to get to a decision point, which is something that you all are eager to do in the first place. So that is my role. Because we are pressed for time, I will also be mindful of that. And so don't perceive me as being rude, just perceive me as being true to my word, which is to help you help yourselves. All right? So with that being said, we're going to talk about the first item, which is dealing with voting on meeting structure. You all have had this as a topic for several meetings now. And so this is not new for you. I want to take a brief moment to talk about the two ways in which you all have already discussed in length how you want to approach the way in which you want to govern yourselves. We'll briefly go through both of these, and then I will open up 10 minutes for discussion, and then we will, if all is well, go to a vote. So the first one is Robert's Rules of Order, and then the other one is the Democratic Rules. Robert's Rules, just in terms of contrast, it provides detailed, standardized parliamentary procedures for orderly meetings. Many of you we already have talked about this. This is more structured, more formal, if you will. Its steps, its motions, its recognitions by the chair. Chair has strong procedural authority, controls, recognitions, motions, and orders. Motions must follow specific formats, sequences, main, subsidiary, privileged, incidentals, things like that. There's strict time limits, who can talk, who can't talk, when you can talk, when you can. There's benefits to all of that. Definitely, there's also constraints. And there's obviously times when and when you can talk. The contrast to that, which all of you have already discussed in length, but I just want to bring it up just to refresh your memory for tonight's discussion and eventual vote, is democratic rules, which ensures decision-making reflects the will of the majority. It's a simpler, maybe a pared-down version that allows for more flexibility in terms of process. It is less formal. It's probably the easiest way of looking at it. It's agenda, discussion flows. It can be adapted by the group. Typically, it also has more facilitator role. It ensures fairness with fewer procedural constraints. There's motions that exist, so there's still some language that you will find that it pulls from Robert's Rules. Maybe it's Robert's Rules light, if you will, in that regards. Often replaced by open discussion, but it still includes direct voting. There's flexibility in time limits. Discussion continues until the group meets consensus or majority is ready to vote. So again, none of this is new to all of you, but this just, again, it sets for what will be a discussion over the next few minutes that you will have. So with that being said, I want to now open up the floor for all of you to begin to have what I will time as a 10-minute discussion. And after time is up, you will hear me say time's up. And then we will, if all is well, move to appoint a vote for you all to benefit as a governance way for you to begin to do the important work that all of you are eager to do. We're good? Yes, Trish.
Is it okay for me to begin? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention, I took a look at the bylaws that the Police Accountability Commission, PAC had. I thought that that might be a good, resource just to figure out, what seemed to work for them. And I just going to read this. In the voting section, Section 5B, the commission will use modified consensus decision-making. If consensus cannot be reached, the affirmative vote of 60% of those present and voting will prevail. It goes on, abstentions, et cetera. But I just thought I'd read that. It seems to me similar to the Democratic, really. I'll just throw that in.
We have an attorney comment.
Sorry, I do want to just be clear that per city code, the votes on things have to be simple majority, except when you're talking about whether we're moving the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability chair. That's a 2/3 vote, yes vote. But otherwise, you do have to have a simple majority. So if you want to get some consensus or 60%, generally striving for that, but ultimately your vote has to be majority by city code.
Yeah.
Does it have to be, is that a threshold, or
No.
we cannot change that?
Correct.
Can I ask one more question on that same piece of code? So it says that the one that you sent to us via email, that it says that the full board, that more than 50%, 11 people is quorum for the full board. Right. But then right after that, it says that a simple majority is more than, it's 50% plus of the full board again. So the question that I had that Justice was also asking about in our previous session is, if it says the full board twice, does that mean that 11 of us have to vote for something no matter how many of us are here? Or if we have quorum of 11 people, do 6 of us have to vote for something, or do all 11 of us have to vote for something?
I believe all 11 of you. I'm going to pull up the code section and I'll double check that, Madeline, but I believe it's all 11.
And I do want to say, Madeline, for the conversation around voting, that will come up in the second item. This is just talking about Robert Rules of Order versus democratic rules in terms of how you would govern yourself. So I want to pull us back to that as our primary topic of conversation right now. I saw your hand, and then also Jillian.
I think it is very important for us to consider that we're a brand new governing body, that in order to really grow into who we are, using the democratic style may be more valuable unless you're truly committed to sticking to a more fixated structure. If you were really committed to choosing a chair and a vice chair and a third person to rotate the chair. So far from the progress we've made, I know I sound uptight, but it's only because I don't want to disappoint this community. It's only because I work directly with the police every day. it sounds like we have to lean towards the Democratic style just for the sake of creating a more solid foundation and not having to go back and fix mistakes. And that is just what I'm seeing right now, just to be purely honest.
Jillian?
Thank you. You answered my first question. I was wondering if we were talking about meeting structure versus decision-making model, so thank you for answering that. And then second, I just wanted to say, we've talked about democratic democratic structure versus Robert's rules a few times, and I haven't heard any strong support for Robert's rules yet. So if we need to take the full 10 minutes to discuss the merits of both, that's fine. I just know that we have a short meeting tonight because of reasons out of our control. So unless, I don't even know how this works. I don't know if you make a motion or what, but I don't know if we need the full 10 minutes is all I'm saying.
Yes, I would be looking for someone to make an official motion and then call the roll as typical process.
Okay. Tim, I'm going to give you a chance to speak. I'm assuming there's not a motion coming, or okay, because I wanted to also make sure that online folks have a chance to weigh in before we get to motion. Tim,
Definitely not
you
jumping to that.
You have the floor.
Last meeting, we all did kind of talk about a lot of the stuff the PAC did with the consensus model that they did in section 6 of their report, of the pages that were provided by Madeline last meeting, 6C in particular. And that seems kind of like what we're talking about, that modified consensus decision-making process, whether you want to call that democratic or not. I don't know the particularity differences, but it seemed like everybody was pretty much in favor of that last meeting, and we pretty much got to almost a vote on that, but then some concerns about city code and what percentage of quorums and things popped up. So it seemed like we were already leaning towards that, and I'm not really hearing anything or seeing anything proposed to change where the group seemed to have gotten to consensus on that. So I propose that somebody move at some point to adopt those rules.
Okay. We want to call anyone online. You want to weigh in or speak to anything you've heard thus far, share some thoughts on the conversation of how you want to govern your meetings with Robert's rules or democratic rules?
We have one hand, Atticus.
Hi, Atticus. Thank you. I agree that we have all kind of seemed to move in that direction of the consensus model that PAC was using with the democratic rules of order. So I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and do a vote on that.
Okay. Thank you, Atticus. We're not just yet at the making a motion, but we received that, the enthusiasm. We're still in discussion mode just right now.
Oh, my fault.
No, it's all good. We receive your enthusiasm. Madeline, and then Sarah, and then Bennigan.
Could you help clarify for us just the difference? So we have two decisions to
There
make,
are two decisions.
correct?
Yes.
So this is a procedure decision.
Yes.
How we will have our discussion.
Yes.
And then there's also the discussion around how we will vote on things, and that's next. So the consensus conversation will be happening next. So this is about how will we frame our discussion in our meetings, and so this is the procedure part, and then we'll have a conversation about how we vote.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is about how you bring things to the table. Robert Rules of Order really creates a structure that is obviously more formal. In many ways, it allows a topic to come. It kind of pushes away, allowing people to talk over each other. It lets something sit where everyone gets a chance to weigh in, to speak to it, right? So there's a lot of formality. In many instances, that is incredibly healthy and necessary. It doesn't allow for someone to steamroll. But it also is fraught in some ways, right? And in some instances, the democratic rule, you want a little bit less formality so that you can move and be more nimble, right? And so that's about how we talk about the work and how we all spend time in collaborative ways to discuss an idea and get to a point where we're then ready to make a decision and vote. So this is what we're talking about, is how we are going to discuss our work. We're not talking about voting on it just yet. So this is really the conversation we're talking about right now. Okay? Are there any other, Benedict, and I know Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to say? Okay, cool.
I guess I'm still a little confused about what we're talking about because
Yes.
we're kind of talking in abstract terms.
Sure.
And I didn't have time, well, I could have, I didn't make time to read through the exact rules. So the only difference that I know about that is obvious to me is the way you handle motions. So in Robert's rules, the motion always belongs to the plenum or to the board, and so that can be really helpful. If there's a motion on the table, then we have to discuss it, and you have to vote on it. So it can be helpful, but it can also be really annoying because the motion often turns out not to be quite right. And so somebody will be like, in my experience, let's amend the motion, and then the person, and then you have to vote on that, whether you even allow this amendment. But I think in a democratic rules of order, to me, the main advantage is how you can move more quickly. You just say like, okay, I meant my motion. Oh, I meant my motion again. And that often helps kind of shape a motion into a direction that is more amenable to what the whole board wants. But my question is, if anybody else has any good examples of what is really the difference in concrete terms, I would really like to hear it.
Yeah. I think that's a great example. There's just a lot more formality with Robert's rules and I think all of you, when you state that, you have to really be committed to it. And I think in many instances, probably you all have done a bit more Robert's rules light. I don't think you really have committed hardcore Robert's rules, to be honest, as I've watched some of your sessions. And so I think that's another thing you also just need to be mindful of. When I mean light, meaning you haven't, as an example, Robert's rules states that if a motion is being made to talk about something, everyone has to speak first before a person can speak for the second time. So there's structure in that regards where you can't just talk quick. I got another thing to say. Nope, you've already spoken once. We need to let everyone speak again. So it's those kinds of formal things. Or if you want to make an amendment, you say, I want to amend something. Okay, you state the amendment. Then we all have to discuss the amendment. We all have to vote on the amendment. If it's approved, then you have to restate the new amended motion, and then we get back to the first motion that's now amended. So again, you can just see it adds length to the discussion, all formal but necessary within Robert's rules. And some of you may be like, yes, I like that. The audience is like, great, that's clarifying. For others, you're like, that is so cumbersome, it slows down the process. Democratic says, like you just said, I want to change this up real quick, boom, 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 we're done, now we get to move forward. And so I think those are examples of where the formality in many instances might be necessary for what you're trying to do, your body of work. The nature of your work requires that level of detail, conciseness, where people can follow the bouncing ball. And in some instances, you might feel like the lack of formality helps you move along at a necessary pace to get to where you need to get to. Still, you can document, but you don't want that level of rigidity. I'll be quiet. We are at time, but I do want to now give you another 2 minutes as a group to decide, and then I'll call you to a place, are you ready to make a vote? Because I do think, Jillian, you are right. You all have talked about this at length, but it's important that you all feel like you had enough time to discuss and also online bring you back into the conversation. Karina.
I just think that whatever set of rules we choose to adopt, we have to rigorously abide by them. And so the democratic style seems more suited for what we're doing, so that we actually follow the rules.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments?
I don't see any hands online.
Okay. I would just echo at the end of the day, whatever you choose to do, consistency matters both for you as a group, for the body of work that you're charged to lead, for the participants in the room, and for the community that's listening. And it also create the structure that you need in order to move your work forward. and for also your future leaders who will be leading this work, for them to also feel comfortable and competent, and for you all to feel like, okay, I know where this is headed. When I heard a motion, I know where we're going, okay? With that being said, we need someone to make a motion to make a determination on what you want to vote for.
We had a lingering motion from Atticus. If Atticus, you wanted to restate your motion?
Yes, Atticus.
Okay, hopefully, I'm hoping I say it in the right way. So motion to make a vote on the structure for the meeting.
Are you proposing a specific model as part of that motion? Or is your intent to have folks say what they would like to do as part of that vote?
It's between Robert's Rules and Democratic.
So you would like to call for a vote and then as part of people's votes, have them state which structure they would like to follow?
Oh.
Or would you like to, as part of your motion, recommend either Robert's Rules or Democratic rules and then have folks vote on a specific
Okay.
rule
Let's do
structure?
Democratic rules.
Okay, so I'm hearing a motion to adopt Democratic rules as the CBPA board meeting structure by Atticus. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jillian. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Kyle?
Aye.
Murtaza?
Yes.
Justice?
Aye.
Madeline?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Corrine?
Aye.
Trish?
Aye.
Skylar?
Aye.
Jillian?
Aye.
Ash?
Yes.
Tita?
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
Tim O'Donnell?
Yes.
Tim Pitts?
Yes.
Tisha?
Aye.
Dina?
Aye.
Atticus?
Aye.
Benedict?
Yes.
All right, so with all in attendance, that is a unanimous vote. We have 3 absent, so that means that we have 19 in favor, and the Democratic rules are adopted. And I should clarify, adopted starting at your next meeting. Though you can certainly use some of it as you wish.
Congrats. So what I would encourage you to do is capture that, bring a cheat sheet, and begin to use it. Obviously, you're going to use it next week. Familiarize yourselves with it. Get really good at it. You can do it in your sleep. It'll serve you well. Now we want to move to the second part of this. It's the flip side to the coin, is how you go about making decisions. Heidi already talked about one component that's fixed, but there is a part of this that we wanted to discuss this evening, but I want to give space for Heidi to bring an update to a question that was already raised.
Thank you. So I did double check, and what I said earlier is correct. So you need at least 11 people here, so that's a quorum, a simple majority, in order to have a meeting. You also need a simple majority of the full board, is the language in the code, to be able to adopt procedures, protocols, and other decisions of the CBPA provided for in code. So for those to go into effect, you need a simple majority vote.
Okay. So on this topic, we can go to the next slide, please. We wanted to talk, again, remind you that built into the code is language that Heidi had already talked about, articulates that as you need for your voting, it is a simple majority that is fixed and not to be adjusted. I think if you can, it's something that has to be done, a very different set of things, but that is not the point of this evening's conversation. I do believe tonight we wanted to talk about something that you perhaps want to consider adding prior to getting to a vote, a decision to be made, if my understanding is correct, which is what can you do to continue to foster and build camaraderie and get to know one another, but also to help build an on-ramp of how you go about making decisions, which is this decision-making model. And so we wanted to overview it, which is what does it mean to seek consensus as a group. So I just wanted to take a few moments. I think this kind of harkens back to what you learned last week, presented by the council from what the PAC does, which is that consensus model, which I thought many of you found like there was a lot of value in that. And I think it speaks just to the idea that you all are still learning to get to know one another. You haven't had a chance to talk about your community agreements that will probably come here in the near future, maybe doing like a private conversation as a group. But this also may give you a chance, perhaps, and you have to decide on this as a way to get to know each other. So consensus decision making model is a collaborative process where a group works together towards solutions that everyone can actively support or at least accept. It emphasizes shared understanding, open discussion. It adjusts the proposals until concerns are addressed. This approach aims to balance efficiency with exclusivity, giving minority viewpoints meaningful influence rather than just letting them be overridden, It's often used in communities or organizations that value participation, trust, and long-term cohesion. So tonight we just want to talk about, is this something that you want to perhaps adopt, not so much to replace the simple majority that's built into your code, but actually to be a part of what you do prior to getting to a vote. So I think, is there one more slide?
There is one more slide, and then I'll flag we have 2 hands.
Okay. So the discussion for you all is to seek consensus before the vote. That is the topic of this evening in terms of your conversation. Would the board like to see consensus before proceeding to a vote structure that is outlined in the Portland City Code? Majority of votes need to be added. Majority of votes needed to add consensus seeking to vote to the voting process. This would begin April 8th. Before I move forward, the hands that are online, questions?
Yes, so we have one hand from Kyle, and then we had an in-person hand from Dina.
Okay. Kyle?
Yeah, thank you. This was on the previous system. Could we flag for a coordinator finding an optional training for how to use democratic rules, best practices? I know we're going to practice it. We can research it on our own, but if the city could flag a resource that we can avail ourselves of, that would be super useful.
Yes. Okay. Dina?
Yeah, I know we had a discussion about consensus the last time, but I don't think we ever touched on this part of the city code about the simple majority. So I'd like to understand a little bit more about how would whatever consensus model we decide on, how is that going to interact with the simple majority that is already put in place? Like, what is going to be holding us to a consensus model if there's already something that's set in stone that we likely cannot change? And depending on the answer to that, I would possibly like to hear from someone who was on the PAC, as I saw that that was in the PAC final report, that they actually recommended the simple majority about, did they use a simple majority? And if so, if not, why is it in the final plan and what was their intention with it? Or if they did use a simple majority, how did that work for them? Because I know they also use consensus. So I think I'm a little bit confused about the language.
Do you want me to answer the first part, Dina, and then I'll let...
That sounds good.
Okay, great. So I think your first question was, how would the consensus work with a simple majority? My thinking is that if you all want to have an agreement amongst yourselves that you like to seek consensus, and then you would work to get to that, and at some point, if you're not getting to consensus, then at some point you're going to want to vote on it, and then the vote would actually be a simple majority. But you can always try to reach consensus. I would say it's always going to be the best way to go. So I think that's a great way to. That's a way you can blend those two things.
Yeah, it's the simple majority is already the fixed mode of getting to a decision. You all adopting consensus as a form of practice of building camaraderie and relationship as a group. To say let's try to always start from a place of learning to hear one another, get to a place of not always trying to pick winners and losers, getting to a place of, because we're all starting new in this, to embracing different perspectives and developing those muscles where we're where we're saying the goal is always to never get only 80% of us to like 100% of what we're voting on, but it's to always get 100% of us to love 80% of what we vote on, if you see the difference, meaning there's always going to be 20% of something that we all don't like. I think if we can always have that posture and attitude, then that means anytime we're voting, like everyone is always like, yes, this genuinely, for the most part, is working for me, and there's always something I don't really like about it. That's like a better posture of everyone moving along. I think that's more the attitude, because you can always just go straight to the vote, but that will mean that people will inherently start feeling like, man, every time we're voting, I'm not being heard. This is not feeling good to me. So starting with consensus is already trying to have a posture of saying, we're going to try to learn from one another and do the best we can to, at a minimum, say yes is the hopeful aspiration, or just try to remove people feeling strongly opposed to whatever we're voting on, which might mean I disagree, but I'm not going to stand in the way of it, might be my posture. So I'll step back, but I wanted to interject that that's really what you're trying to get after. I see hands, Jillian.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I had a second part to my question, actually.
Yeah.
Heidi answered the first part. So for the second part, I asked about the PAC specifically because I was reviewing the PAC final plan, and I saw that they included that language. So I'm wondering how that kind of worked for them. Did they use a simple majority as they did recommend it in the final report? And if they did use it, I'd like to know how that worked with their consensus model. So I don't want to put Tim Pitts on the spot, but I know Tim Pitts is on the board, and I know Debbie is also in the room. So if either of them are willing to weigh in on how that worked, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the council member, when I was reading, he did say, when I was watching the video, he did say that they would eventually go to a vote of the simple majority or.
Yeah, I can just clarify online if that's fine. I can't actually get my hand raise function to work, but yeah, Dina, to answer your question fully, it was rare that we had to actually go to a vote. And so we did use the consensus-based model. It was the way to work to the decision. But then if we did actually have to go to a vote, I think in our case, we did have the 60% threshold, but we would still count votes, but it was very, very rare. So the way Heidi described it is, I 100% agree with, just sort of consensus-based is the goal and the thing that you're working towards, but just knowing that at the end of the day, majority rules.
Yep.
And I want to interject real quick. We have a hand online, Atticus, and I know I saw Jillian's hand up as well.
We'll go Tracy first. I forgot.
Okay. Jillian and then Trish.
Thank you. I think just to answer the first part of Dina's question, something that I would envision for like how this would actually interact in practice is like, I'd like for us to have an agreement amongst ourselves that we wouldn't call for a vote or make a motion to vote on something if we felt that there was strong opposition from a significant portion of our board. I think functionally building that can look a few different ways. One thing that I've seen work well is like the use of straw polls. So like before an official like binding vote, people can actually just like do like a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs sideways type of thing. To like show whether or not, like, you know, thumbs down is like, I would block this vote, I'm strongly opposed. Sideways is like, I don't love it, but I wouldn't stand in the way. And thumbs up is like, I think it's good. And then just using like discussion to make amendments before we actually call for a vote, so that way, once we're calling for a vote, we're pretty confident that it's not gonna be like a very split vote at that point. Check.
Okay. Trish.
Yeah, I thought it might be helpful I'll just read this briefly. This is from the PAC bylaws on modified consensus decision-making. The commission will make decisions collaboratively. All viewpoints will be honored, respected, and have appropriate time for consideration to make a decision on any proposal or matter. Either one member shall formulate a proposal or a co-chair shall create a proposal based on commission discussion. Commissioners shall be able to propose modifications to the proposal until a consensus position can be reached. Commissioners will deliberate on proposals in the spirit of compromise and consider the commission's identified values and principles. I think that's a really important sentence. After deliberation, commissioners will identify whether they are supportive, neutral, or in opposition. If all commissioners are supportive or neutral, the proposal or matter passes. If any commissioner is in opposition to a proposal, the commissioners will discuss the item further to try to achieve consensus. If consensus is not achievable, the commissioners will either vote on the proposal or table it. I just thought that might be a good example.
Did I see some hands over here? Do you have? Yes, sir.
And we have Atticus's hand back up as well.
Okay, Benedict, and then Atticus second.
I guess maybe I have a slightly different perspective, but I agree with the intent of like actually considering the different perspectives and also actually deliberating in the sense of like not everybody can talk, but everybody actually listens. But at the same time, I feel like the democratic rules of order already give plenty of space for debate. Like we hear everybody's perspective. The debate only ends when somebody actually calls for a vote on something, on the motion, and you have, if there's opposition to it, you have to vote to have a vote. So I feel like the rules we adopted already have like plenty of safeguards to encourage good decision-making processes. So I'm really not convinced that we need to like formally adopt this intention.
Okay. Okay. Atticus?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that on the agenda, publicly available online, says public comment is meant to be had. So I was just wanting to mention that if we can factor that in as well.
Yes. And Atticus, we actually did have public comment earlier in the agenda already, and no one was signed up for it. Thank you, though.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a few more moments on my timer. Any other thoughts before I do my first invitation towards a vote? For anyone that has not had a chance and so desires, go for it. Online.
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo the point that was just made. I think this is an unnecessary aspiration. And maybe that should be put in the aspirational column, not necessarily needed for this particular situation. The democratic rules provide for us to have discussions related to these issues. In addition to that, I find that I'm not a fan of doing things so everybody likes it. I'm a fan of doing things because they're the right thing to do. And I'm not a fan of saying, hey, I want 80% and I don't like 20%. And I understand that we need to compromise on certain things, but I think our goal here is not to compromise, but to get this thing right. And so that's what I think we need to be focused on, not necessarily the aspirational goals. But what I hear people saying is that relationally we need to grow as a group, and I don't disagree with that, but I don't think a mechanism that requires consensus is what is necessary. I think that's us building personal relationships through outside things, through having proper decorum, through speaking with people that builds that, not a voting model that requires us to, or that would indicate that we would need consensus before we move forward.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we are at our 10-minute time of discussion. So I want to pause and ask, are there any final thoughts before I bring a first call to motion to make a decision on this? Dina.
Yeah, I mean, we did discuss it last time, and I know Madeline and I brought forward some information from the PAC, and also Councillor Canal came and talked about the PAC's modified consensus, which you can find the slideshow in your email and review that. But I personally am of the opinion that we should adopt the modified consensus. even if we also have the simple majority as well. I just know that I've spoken with multiple people who are on the PAC, and it really helped build a relationship across the board, build trust across the board, and make sure that everyone felt heard. I understand the Democratic Rules of Order offer some of that, but I think having a modified consensus could further it. So that's personally what I'm leaning towards, but I'm not hearing a ton of input on it, so I would love to hear more if people are interested in making a motion. I would just love to learn about more people's opinions.
Okay. Yes, Trish.
Are you ready for a motion?
We can be ready for a motion. That we've had our 10 minutes plus for discussion.
We have a hand online.
Okay, we'll respond to that hand.
Kyle?
Yeah, can anyone remind me, how big was PAC?
Someone said 20
20 people.
With a question mark.
Okay.
with the question mark.
Yeah.
So
No question mark. That was 20 in bold caps.
So similar size. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for a motion.
I move that we adopt the modified consensus decision-making model.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Sorry, can you give your name?
Kyle, seconded.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, I will call the roll. Kyle?
Yay.
Murtaza?
Yes.
Justice?
I think we should be discussing this motion. Put it out there like that. My concern is twofold. Number one, you just said that we wanted a consensus model. The request was previously made was a modified consensus model. We haven't even discussed what really, from my perspective, what a consensus model actually is related to these specific issues. And so I guess I have concerns. This is the whole reason why this doesn't really make practical sense, because we've said three different things here. We've already decided that we're deciding that we've already stated that we were going to be doing a simple majority. That's what the rules require. There was a question that was just brought up about a modified consensus process that was brought up by the PAC. Then now we're talking about a consensus model, which I don't even think we've had that adequately defined related to what that actually means to everybody. And so I guess that's a concern, but I will say nay now that we've gone to that point.
Madeline?
Aye.
Sarah?
I'm kind of confused by everything that was just said a minute ago. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to say nay right now.
Corrine?
No.
Trish?
Aye.
Skylar?
Aye.
Jillian?
Aye.
Ash?
Aye.
Tita?
Nay.
Jesse?
Nay.
Tim O?
Yes.
Tim P?
Yes.
Tisha?
Nay.
Dina?
Aye.
Atticus?
Aye.
Benedict?
No.
The motion passes with 11 votes.
Can I make one quick statement?
Ironic.
This is what I mean by putting into place something that doesn't make sense. So, if a consensus model was to get consensus in which what I heard from people was 80% of people would like what they like and 20% went it. We just had a 19 people vote. It was 11-7. We haven't even reached it on this vote. It does not make sense. And I know we can go back and we're going to rediscuss this, but this is exactly the point that I'm talking about. We literally have just lived out what we've talked about in the democratic rules related to discussing these things. And now we're saying no, instead of doing what's going on, we're going to go ahead and have this consensus, I feel, but we've literally just voted, we've done the exact opposite of what we asked for. It doesn't make any sense, y'all, so I'm going to leave it there. But I want you to realize the irony of what we're saying here, because what we're saying is the exact opposite of what was expressed. Pointed it out.
Okay. So at this point, we will move to our next agenda item, which is talking about additional staff resources.
Could you still clarify what the actual thing is we adopted? Because I don't know how to.
Yes. Do you want to read that, Haley?
So the motion was to adopt a modified consensus model.
Before the vote. You can go back to the slide before. And this is what it reads.
I apologize. I got to jump in again. The motion wasn't to adopt a modified consensus model. The motion was to, which is why I asked and I pointed that out when I was voting. So
Justice,
are we doing a modified consensus or a consistent? Yes?
I'm being told by BTS, I don't know how you're holding your speaker. If you step a little farther back from your speaker, you're coming off a little garbled for the room, so it's kind of hard to hear what you're saying. So try putting some distance between you and your mic.
Gotcha. Hold on one second. I'm going to change. So when I spoke out before, I asked specifically, was this for a modified consensus or consensus? Because the motion was it supposed to be a consensus? That was the motion. I moved to have a consensus model. What I just heard you repeat was that we were going to be doing a modified consensus, which is not what the motion was. And so I want to make sure we have clarification on that.
Trish,
I
can you
made
clarify?
the motion, and it was the modified consensus model. And I don't know if this is helpful or hurtful, but, responsive to some of those statements, I could, I guess, amend my motion. I don't know if that's appropriate, but say that we adopt the modified consensus decision-making model as practiced by the PAC as in their bylaws. As I read to you before, I don't know if that helps or hurts.
Madeline?
To clarify, modified consensus is what we just discussed previously, which means that we try to reach consensus, and if consensus isn't possible, then we go to a vote. We are, based on what we're told in code, we're required to use a simple majority for that vote if we're not able to reach consensus. So that's what we voted on, is do we want to include a process to try to reach consensus before we do a vote? And if we do have to go to a vote, then we will use a simple majority.
Correct.
That's what my motion was.
Okay.
Could we just quickly make sure that all those who voted in favor of that's what you understood you were voting in favor of, just to have real clarity?
Yep.
And maybe you can do a thumbs up of those who voted in favor.
I think what we're referencing is what is what we learned from Councillor Canal and what is in the PAC bylaws. I mean, that's what we discussed at the last meeting, and we almost came to a vote on some of what was in that, but you can refer to the PAC bylaws. You can refer to the PowerPoint that was sent by Councillor Canal, and then we can discuss anything that's in between that, but I think that's what most of us are referring to.
Because I still need clarification on that. Is the motion supposed to adopt a specific written rule that this board will have to follow to, be acting legally? Or does this just say our intention is to find consensus, and if we kind of feel like there's consensus, then somebody will make a motion? But in the end, we're following democratic rules of order, so somebody can always make a motion. Like, those are two different things, and I'm actually in favor of the intention, but I'm not in favor of adopting more rules.
Madeline and then Jillian.
We will need to create bylaws for ourselves, and so in the process of creating bylaws, we can make decisions about the details of this process the same way that the PAC created bylaws and made decisions about the details. As Trish was saying, I think the PAC is a great place for us to start, and we can look at those details word for word and decide if we want to do what the PAC did, except that we would not do a 60% vote because we're required to do a simple majority vote, or we can change things. And so basically what we have decided is that we do want to move forward with creating a consensus model for ourselves. And what that looks like exactly is not yet completely decided, is my understanding.
Okay. Jillian and then Tito. Jillian and then Tito.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that the only thing that actually like legally binds us is what's in code. And so what we're talking about here is how we want to relate to each other. And I know other people, I think Kyle in the past had brought up like, we need to have a conversation about values and things like that. And this is very much in line with that. So to me, this is like, we're talking about like team culture. We're not like, we can't change city code. We can't override city code. And the bylaws conversation, as Madeline just said, will be a much more in-depth process of creating and adopting bylaws. Check.
Okay. Tito?
I think this decision-making model could possibly help us to create committees and subcommittees, which will then help us follow city code, which will then help us stay and be legal, which will help us in reducing liability to us and the city. I think that's a good direction for us to head in. And I think we can definitely tie it into the democratic style. This is all something that can coexist, but I think in this moment and in this transition, it can definitely sound confusing. I think as we move forward, it'll become more clear. I think we can make all of this work. Just remember, we are not PAC. As we are adopting their ideas, we can integrate our own ideas into it.
Great.
We have a hand online, Kyle, and then I saw Justice come off mute as well, so that's potentially a second hand.
Okay, Kyle?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to, I saw this vote as a relational model, like basically how we do process in our work up until the water's edge of taking a vote, and then we're required to operate by city code. So for me, it's the discussion, how we relate to one another, how we build subcommittees, things like that. It's not subverting city code in any way. So people could still call a vote and it would still be simple majority, but for the purposes of how we build our infrastructure and relate to one another and work with each other, it's the modified consensus rules. That's the way I understood the motion.
Okay. Then Justice, and then Chris.
So I'm still need some clarification on that. So what I hear you saying is this an aspirational model, not anything that's binding to us. So we're just going with the democratic rules, and then somebody wants to call a vote, they call a vote. And then if we're moving forward with our process, that's how we're going to do it. I just want to make sure that's clear, because what I've heard is two different things. I've heard, no, we've adopted this model. This is what we're doing. And so when I said, is this aspirational? I said, no, this is the model we're adopting. And I've heard now that it's an aspirational thing. So I still need some clarification on that. Secondarily, to reiterate my point, this is not what we did when we just had that vote right now, related to the modified consensus. There wasn't a modified consensus. There wasn't anything of that nature. How can we tell if there's a modified consensus if there's not an initial vote to be able to tell who is in favor of something or who is not in favor of something? The whole point of a modified consensus is before you even call a vote. Before you even call a vote, you have a determination between the group themselves, and you say, hey, who's in favor of this? Any strong opposition? Anything going on right here? This is the exact opposite of what we did, and we're instituting it. And the folks that voted for it are the folks who are saying, hey, this is what we really want, but you did the exact opposite in this whole point. In this whole thing we've done, it doesn't make any sense. It's just like putting bureaucracy on bureaucracy that doesn't add anything to it. So what you've said is you've done the opposite of what you've actually recommended. And now what you did was say, we're going to call a vote. I said, hey, I don't think that's right here. This is not even what we're supposed to be doing right now. And then what I'm hearing is, no, we just adopted that, and that's the way it's supposed to go. This is not a good way to start out the relational aspects that you guys are talking about right now if you actually want to do a modified consensus aspirational model. That's my point that I'm making. It's not a good stepping stone in that, because you've done the exact opposite of that. So I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Thank you, Justice. Yes, Kareem.
I just wanted to say that my vote was no, because it's a superfluous vote, since we haven't even addressed bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
And in the bylaws, we're actually going to get details on how things are going to work out for us. So that's why I voted no.
Okay, thank you.
Justice, I just want to say that I totally understand how you're feeling right now, and I think ideally we would have had a longer discussion and made sure that everything was super clear. We've had 3 meetings now of discussing how we're going to make decisions together, and I think a lot of us are feeling the need to move forward with something and then sort of build it as we're using it. So I just want to validate, like, I totally understand how you're feeling, and this is how I do not want people to feel in our conversations moving forward, and that's the whole reason why I would like to use a consensus model moving forward, and I think how you're feeling is completely valid, and ideally, in our conversations moving forward, we will make sure that everyone has a lot of clarity and that all of our issues have been addressed and that questions are answered. And I just want to apologize for the fact that this moved faster than ideally I think all of our decisions should move. Faster in this specific meeting. I think we've had a lot of time to think and talk about it, and we've had a lot of resources provided to us. So I do feel a little bit confused about why people are still confused about what we're deciding. And I think we need to make sure that people understand our decisions before we make them. So I'm not saying it's bad that anyone's confused. I'm just saying we need to work on how we can communicate better so that we can address confusion in our decision-making process as we move forward.
Any final thoughts or additional pieces, Tita?
I think if we
thank you.
adopted our process and followed it, we could communicate more efficiently.
Justice, you were going to say something?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I appreciate those kind words. We have the Democratic rules. We know it's a simple majority. That's the whole point I'm making. It's an unnecessary tool. That's the reason why. It's not about anything related to that. It's unnecessary because we already decided. The code decided for us. We have our rules in place. Let's just follow them, not add another layer of decision making onto it. But go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Justice. So at this time, our final point of discussion is additional resources. So we're going to take a few moments here.
And I just want to flag, we are at 8:19. We have a hard stop at 8:30. There are a couple slides that Kristen put together for all of you that the folks that told her to put this on here and helped us form the agenda. Thank you again for your work for tonight. Told Kristen to shoot for the moon and tell you all what they think would be most apt in terms of support for OCPA getting stood up. So these slides, I think we're just going to flip through very quickly so that folks can familiarize and kind of just put it on the record for your all's consideration. But the thing that we need to do before the end of tonight is select another 3 individuals to help form the next meeting's agenda, and that group of individuals can determine if they want to put this on that agenda as a point of discussion for this board. So with that, we're going to go ahead and click through a couple of our resource options.
So OCPA director responsibilities, and also invite Tracy if you want to weigh in on any of these as well. You can speak to these directly.
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in.
Thank you.
I think one of the challenges that we have in the existing moment is that there is an additional call for support to the board, but the director has not been hired yet who has the authority to hire other staff to support the board. So we currently are operating with 1 FTE to support the board, and that is constrained when she is trying to answer questions and gather information for 21 different people, basically. And so these slides are really around how you all might be able to add additional support by authorizing the city to make the hire, specifically the deputy city administrator, myself of those additional staff while you do not have a director in place. This talks about the limited duration staff that you currently have in place. That's Kristen, who's been supporting you all. We talked earlier about the need for city attorney or outside counsel support. We also see that there's a need for some type of communication specialist. These are just estimates on what classification that might be in the city structure. We're also in need of a clerk to help with these meetings to make sure that we're able to run through them smoothly. We have been providing that support ad hoc with the staff that are available, myself showing up, Haley, and Kristen to do that work, but we need to have a longer-term solution. And then an analyst to help support the creation of templates and tools for the board as you start to get things prepared. Additionally, we need to start moving ourselves through the transition process of the current oversight system to the new oversight system, which means we've got a lot of prep work to do associated with that could use some help. And so then this last slide is related to how I started the conversation, which is just that in order to do that without a director in place, the board would have to authorize me to do that.
There's one more slide.
And then I wanted to just give a little bit of information around the cost of doing business. So while we've been ad hoc supporting the board, the typical framework to provide services. So for example, the technology folks that are here today, that's a cost recovery model. So every time they put together all of this, we are paying for that through the CBP or the OCBPA budget. That budget was authorized by the City Council, who is our budget council. I believe you all received budget information earlier. I think we're in this awkward position in that how the process would typically work is that you all would have a director who would help create a budget plan that would then be included in our budget development process and then later adopted by council. That would outline how you plan to spend money over the fiscal year. And then I see a couple of hands. Madeline?
So a bit of context for this is that we need committees, and we can't staff committees without more support. Kristen does not have the capacity to staff committees, so we're stuck in this catch-22 right now where we need more staff in order to make the decisions, in order to hire a director and to do all of the other things like budget that we need to make decisions about. So we can't hire permanent staff before the director comes on. That's why Kristen is currently a temporary staff person as well. But we can hire temporary staff until the director comes on, and then we can either move to make those staff permanent and have the director make that official decision, or it depends on what the director wants to do, honestly. But we're the director's boss, so we have a lot of say in that as well. So basically, we're stuck in this difficult place where in order to move forward on making decisions in committees, we need more support. And the PAC had several different facilitators, as well as their own counsel or their own legal counsel, and also had a project manager. And so the amount of staff that was used to create the plan to create this board greatly exceeded what we're trying to do now with Kristen, and we can't keep expecting her to be everything for everyone and be the clerk and the facilitator and be our communication staff and be all of those different things. And so that's what Tim and Dina and I discussed with her. We said, tell us what we really need in order to move forward effectively. Like, don't hold back, because at first she was like, well, maybe we need 1 or 2 more staff people. And then she listed all the different things that need to happen. And we were like, it sounds like we need more than 1 or 2 staff people. So be really clear about what you would ask for if you could. So that's where this came from. And I didn't see that facilitation was in that. Was it in the
It
list?
was. We just, it was on slide, if you go back maybe 2 or 3, it is listed ongoing facilitation
Oh,
needs
great.
as well.
Okay.
And I thank you for providing that added context, Madeline. That's really helpful. Again, not something that we have time to dig in and discuss tonight. We just wanted to get the options in front of everyone.
Yep.
Also, things that come to your own mind, right? But just to share what Kristen had kind of listed. And we do need to find 3 volunteers.
Yes,
That's how
we
they
do.
operated last
So
time for the agenda.
Before we move on, I do want to add one piece of clarification, which is that for you all to hire staff to the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability, they have to be temporary. But you can authorize to hire people, for me to hire people, basically you are authorizing the payment for folks to sit in other parts of the city that are dedicated resources to the board. So for example, communication staff, right?
Thank you for that clarification.
I do see 2 hands online. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to push folks that if it's about this item, that we can try to come back to that at a different time. But if it needs to be clarified, keep your hand up. Atticus?
Hi, yeah, I did just want to mention for the public that is watching this in the Teams meeting, an update just for the public comment online, which is still inaccessible for the public. We have a development team that needs to do a complete modification to the software that we use, and decision will need to be made prior so that the board, so we can build the tools that meets the need of the board. And the goal is to have a manageable process with clear expectations in how to give public comment online. Thank you.
Thank you, Atticus. All right, on to our final item.
Final item. We'd like to select 3 members to help set the agenda for next week. Do we have any volunteers? Yes.
I see Tita, Corrine, and then Ash were the first hands up.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. And with that, we will close this meeting.
Can we thank Tori for his excellent facilitation? Thank you.
Thank you, Tori.
We are adjourned.
And Haley as well. Thank you, Haley.
And Haley, thank you all.